The Chinese Grand Prix is done and dusted, and unsurprisingly, Max Verstappen showed us that it was another weekend of easy domination for the Red Bull in his hands. But behind him, something interesting happened. Perez didn't look too comfortable in the Red Bull and struggled with the best of the rest. Are these the first signs that the other teams are catching up? And if so, who could we expect to challenge them in Miami? Especially now that the top teams behind Red Bull will bring their first big upgrades of the season in the upcoming 2 races. So let's check out what upgrades we'll see in Miami. First up, McLaren was the biggest surprise in the Chinese Grand Prix. Andrea Stella underlined the necessity of seizing any possibilities that presented itself as the weekend approached. Naturally, the sprint race style would afford many opportunities to shine or disappoint. The MCL38 was the closest challenger to Red Bull. In the hands of Lando Norris, McLaren finished ahead of Checo Perez's RB20, although with the assistance of the safety car. The 2024 season, like the previous 2, will be dominated by Max Verstappen. The RB20 is comfortably ahead of the competition, particularly in the hands of Verstappen, who is significantly faster than Perez. McLaren might have won in China, even if the Dutchman was not there. However, Andrea Stella seems disinterested in these hypotheticals. My attention is focused on how to close the gap with Max, not on what would have happened without him, the Italian engineer stated. I have a lot of admiration for what Max and Red Bull are achieving, and I think that winning so consistently isn't easy. Even though they always make it look simple, there are so many reasons why things can go wrong, so hats off for what they are achieving on a technical, operational and sporting level. McLaren is one of the teams, along with Ferrari and Mercedes, that have yet to make substantial changes in 2024. The first set of changes will arrive at the following race in Miami for all 3 teams, when McLaren will be able to confirm whether the development trajectory established in Austria 2023 is still relevant. If we take the last 12 months, we have developed better than any other team. Obviously, Red Bull ended development very early because they were working behind the scenes to innovate the car in a dramatic way, and to do that takes months of redesign, Stella said. So, even if we apparently lost ground, this is due to the fact that we had earned so much before. But if we can maintain this development trajectory for the next 12 months, why not think we can catch up with Red Bull? Concluded the Italian engineer. Lando Norris expressed this confidence, pointing out that race victories are not out of reach. The first of 3 significant seasonal packages for Norris and Piastri's car will arrive in Miami, albeit it will be smaller than those shown in Austria and Singapore last year. We will have some updates in Miami. We'll see how they behave on the track, but we expect them to allow us to take a notable step forward, Andrea Stella said in China. This, clearly, if we find the right correlation with the numbers in the wind tunnel and with the CFD. All of this is always a big if, because even if the correlation rate has been good in the last 12 months, there are always possible surprises. McLaren demonstrated great tyre warm-up capabilities during qualifying in the early stages of the season. However, the performance was somewhat inferior to that of Ferrari in the race. This is especially true in Miami, where asphalt temperatures are projected to be higher. This initial upgrade package will boost the MCL38's overall performance as well as its tyre use during the race. In Miami, it will be critical to control rear overheating. This is a typical issue with the MCL38, especially when compared to Ferrari and Red Bull. This is why the Woking team will be paying close attention to this improvement. The team's goal is to avoid overheating and fight Ferrari on more rear-limited tracks. Still, the team understands that this improvement package may not be sufficient to overtake Ferrari. It should be noted that Ferrari will respond big at Imola with enhancements of its own, and will make smaller changes for Miami. These changes will see Ferrari having a very memorable weekend in Miami. Here, the Maranello-based team will commemorate the 70th anniversary of the prancing horse in the United States. The livery of the SF24 shown this year, which has classic red, along with white and yellow stripes on the car's sides, will be updated for the Miami Grand Prix. Light blue, a historically significant hue for the Scuderia, will return. 2 different tones of blue will stain the Ferrari of America. One is Dino blue, a deeper shade which was one of the favourite colours of Arturo Merzario and Clay Ragazzino, who wore it in 1974. Since then, Ferrari's outfits have always been red, with a few outliers involving white overalls. Until then, blue was a common hue for work uniforms at Maranello, as evidenced by Ferrari published images. The Azzurro La Plata, on the other hand, is the lightest hue used in the Argentine flag. It also resembles the tracksuits worn by the famous Alberto Ascari during his most successful seasons. Ascari used to wear a blue shirt and matching helmet, which he believed lucky. Other drivers that wore blue were John Surtees, Lorenzo Bandini, Ludovico Scarfiotti, and Chris Amon. Niki Lauda, who wore blue in his debut year with Scuderia Ferrari, is another notable one. While blue is not commonly linked with the Scuderia, the history is there, and in Miami we'll see it again. And if you thought that were all the expected upgrades from the top teams, well then, you're wrong, as Mercedes will do everything they can to beat their customers' teams, at least in Miami. So, maybe the most anticipated updates will be seen on the W15 in Miami, as Mercedes will unveil a significant set of enhancements in the upcoming GP. The German Constructors' Challenger will undergo a number of changes in order to reverse its downward track. Last weekend served as another reminder of the Silver Arrow's shortcomings, which should be addressed in the forthcoming package. Despite a few moments, the Chinese Grand Prix was largely bad for Toto Wolff's team. Lewis Hamilton's fantastic lap in sprint qualifying on Friday put him in a solid position for Saturday's race. He took advantage of the chance, finishing second to Max Verstappen. Although Fernando Alonso's defending aided the British driver, Mercedes had a positive afternoon. The same cannot be true for the following 48 hours, during which the W15 struggled to function properly. Hamilton's P18 in qualifying, despite a mistake in turn 14, was the first sign that things would decline. George Russell did not have a much better session, finishing at the bottom of the top 10. This poor pace continued on Sunday, with the Brackley-based squad slower than McLaren and Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin. While a lack of points from Lance Stroll might help Mercedes finish fourth in the standings, their goals to challenge Red Bull are presently out of reach. In this sense, Toto Wolff believes that improvements can help the situation. We know that today's result is not strong enough overall, so we must dig deep to make improvements, he said in the Mercedes race review. The pack behind Red Bull is close, and small details can make a big difference in terms of finishing position. We have developments to bring in the coming races, which we hope are a step forward and will improve the car. The goal in the Mercedes context is fairly clear. Discover the correct aeromechanical connection, which is currently lacking. As a result, the technicians will make significant efforts on American soil, and significant package that will include improvements to the floor, above and below to rectify the flow trend and stabilize the W15's aero map, particularly at specific speed ranges. The fluid vane separation is obvious, and factor that greatly decreases the car's performance. Furthermore, corrections will be made in the middle section of the single-seater, the side pod region, with a possible and essential reshaping to gain a few extra cubic centimeters in the undercut area. It remains to be seen if the multi-award-winning team will unveil the new rear wing, which has been in development for some time. Based on the information gathered, we can conclude that this is an update capable of maximizing the load on the rear due to the configuration of the beam wing, which is currently an imperfect context, since the combined work of the two present components is not as effective as it might be. Mercedes is poised to take a move that will allow it to unleash some of the car's untapped potential while also expanding its development window. We'll have to wait and see if these floor upgrades will enable Mercedes to improve their current form and maybe even better help them get the car in a wider setup window, as this seems to be Mercedes' biggest problem in the last 2.5 years. What do you think? Will any of these updates help one of the teams beat Red Bull? Or will it just shake up the order behind them? And if one of them were to challenge the Red Bulls, who would it be? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.